So I'm so grateful to be here today, and I thought what would be helpful, the title of this is Bridging the Urban and Rural Divide, and it's been a topic I've been talking about in multiple venues. But what I thought might be helpful is to give you a view of what I've seen. I've been in the role now, I was named CEO about 14 months ago. And I want to talk about what I've learned over those 14 months, what I'm seeing in business right now, the disruption that we're seeing in this business, but it's not unique. Disruption is occurring in multiple businesses, how we're thinking through that, the importance of innovation. And then, yes, I do want to talk about what I see in rural America especially, and the concerns that I have that I think, not only do our members live in these rural communities and their families, but I'm concerned because the investment it's underinvested in rural America, and it's a security issue for the country. It's, as I say, we're not going back and settling the land again, but we're seeing some of these communities roll up. And I want to talk about that and the things that I think we all can do to address this issue. So why don't we get started? I want to make sure I've got the right, okay. So what have I done? So it's been an eventful year, as you can imagine. And what did I do when I was first named? Well, I did the thing that you would expect a new CEO to do. I was out looking at, in the country with different constituencies. I was with our members. I was in DC because policy is so centrally important to agriculture especially. So I was in DC a lot. I was with our local retailers and our farmers, and of course I was with our team. I was looking at the structure of the business, and I was looking at what level of disruption were we seeing and what were the likely implications for the business going forward. I had to name my team, I had to think about what the structures were, what investments we needed to make, and talk with the board about what I saw and what was changing. And what I noted specifically was that disruption was happening at speed, and at the same time, we had this grand challenge, this continuation of the grand challenge we've all been talking about in agriculture. We have to feed 10 billion people by 2050, and we have to do it with less land and less water utilization. These conversations that are occurring about sustainable production are increasing, and they are disruptive. We've been making investments. I want to talk a little bit about that, but this is the grand challenge. This is one of the reasons that I decided when I was in New York and was asked if I'd come in and talk with Land O'Lakes and talk about what the opportunity was in the business. I said, this is meaningful work. This is an opportunity to put a very lengthy career against a challenge that I think is so significant and so important. So this is still the challenge. How do we think about sustainable production over the long term? How are we going to feed 10 billion people with less land and less water availability? And how are we going to do that in a disrupted environment? So this chart is an interesting one. I've used it a few times. This is the chart over there is the farms that are growing bigger. What's happening is consolidation is happening at a rapid pace. Where we're certainly seeing that is in the dairy world. 3 farmers a day, 3 producers a day are going out of business in Wisconsin, dairy producers. There used to be 90,000 dairy producers, registered dairy producers in, say, 2001, and today there's under 50,000. It's consolidating at a 6.5% clip. So what do we do about that? And at the same time, farm size is getting bigger. We're seeing consolidation on the acre, and what happens oftentimes is people talk about the front to back, the top to bottom, the Bayer Monsanto put together, the Syngenta Kim China. All of those things are occurring because things are coming off patent, right? And so that level of disruption is there. Oftentimes when I'm speaking or when I do interviews, what do they want to talk about? They want to talk about the disruption from tariffs and trade. And that is another element. We've had a strong US dollar. My observation would be that from 2005 or 6 till 2013, it was a pretty good time in agriculture. It was a pretty good time in the business. Why? Ethanol use was increasing. China was opening up, so international markets. And international markets are centrally important to agriculture. In dairy, 1 day of 7 is exported. It's manufactured and exported. So the cows are milking every day, sometimes 3 times a day, so we have to find a home for the milk, right? So export markets are critically important to the profitability of the most productive farmers in the world, the American farmer. So this tariff discussion, the strong US dollar, the disruption that is occurring is really important for us to understand, and that speed of change is coming at pace. So between 2005 and 2013, it was pretty good times. There were open markets, markets were expanding, profitability was strong in farms. Since that time, since 2013 or 14, even in our business, it's been about making sure we had the right cost structures, and at the same time that we were looking to innovation to grow going forward. But it's been a very difficult time for farmers from 2013 or 14 on. In fact, over the last couple of years, the average income for farmers was about $44,000. The median was minus $1,550. This tells you about the stress that is in the country, the challenges. Most people on the farm are getting by with second jobs, with innovation. I think of the farmer as the original entrepreneur. They figure it out. It can be too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. They can have commodity price challenges, and they figure it out. I admire their resilience. And at the same time, this chart tells you about the level of disruption that's coming back at the farm. But there's another level of disruption. Now, why do I bring this retail disruption in? And here we have a couple of our companies here in the Twin Cities. Retail is disrupting. It will be longer last because, you know what, most of the farmers I talk to, they are used to a cycle. They are used to a commodity cycle, so when it's more profitable, they invest in their balance sheet, they strengthen their balance sheet, they invest in their operation, and they look for the other part of the cycle. That's how they're able to sustain their business. But there's another level of disruption that is pushing back, that has changed the way we think of our business, about moving our business to more of an omni-channel play, and is the level of disruption that's happening at retail. Now on this slide, you can look at it and say, well, who's winning at retail on this slide and who's not winning? Well, we know Sears isn't probably winning right now, right? Or JCPenney's, or as I say in my family, that was Jacques Penney. That was pretty fancy stuff for us. With my 7 siblings, I was wearing a lot of tough skins from Sears back in the day. So why is that? Well, what happened was, in the past, retail was about position and assets and stores, right? And Sears was well positioned. But now it's about online, omni-channel. All of us have been trained by Amazon, right? We want to order it when we want to order it. Sometimes I want to order something on my phone. Sometimes I do it at my computer. Sometimes I call somebody. Sometimes I go to the store. But businesses like Sears or JCPenney's or other that are asset heavy have to get turns at the store level. They have to leverage their position. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have a differentiated offer at retail, and as I said, I can get my white t-shirts for my kids anywhere. I don't have to go to Sears to get those. I don't have to go to JCPenney's. If they don't offer something differentiated, we're not going to go to those locations. Isn't that true? So who's winning? Well, a couple of the stores in town, retailers in town, Best Buy and Target. Target is being pretty aggressive to invest in their technology. And Best Buy has changed, and what they would tell me, as they have, is that they're not making money necessarily on the TV they sell. They're making money on the services, on the market basket, right? It's all the other things they wrap around that and connect to the consumer. So I bring this up because it is a corollary to what we're seeing happen in agriculture. We do have, and we are owned by local retailers in addition to our farmers. And that position in the country is still valued. A local agronomist is still valued. But the farmers want to order when they want to order it, and you have to have a differentiated offer, otherwise it's a price game. It is a race to the bottom. We have to offer services, we have to expand, and we have to have an omni-channel play. So one of the things that we did in my first year is we shifted the capital plan very aggressively in partnership with our board to invest in technology to make sure we had a position. Because the math would say, in every other industry that has been disrupted, if you don't have a position in omni-channel, e-business, and 15% of orders in the industry are going through that platform, that type of platform, you never catch up. So you have to have a position. We have a position, and at the same time, we have a differentiated offer. So it's not that we're just negotiating on the price. Yes, that's part of it. But what we try to do is use an insight-driven model, predictive models, our soil labs, our data and analytics, to go back to the farmer and through the agronomists and work with them about what they can do on their farm to optimize and reduce variability, to optimize output, reduce variability, and optimize profitability. It will be critically important, and it is the change that we're seeing in agriculture. What else is happening is that when disruption occurs at retail, businesses do what businesses do. So when Whole Foods was purchased by Amazon, this disrupted the grocery industry significantly. So many of the retailers are now doing what businesses do. They go back through the value chain and they try to capture profit pools. They put on their own processing capacity, and in fact, some of these businesses are putting on their own animals. So it goes back to the farmer. It always goes back to the farmer, changing the way that they need to think about their business and their investments. Changing for us, our business. People are putting on their own processing, they're putting on their own animals, so we can leverage our enterprise because we also own Purina, animal nutrition, right? But at the same time, we know they're going to pressure milk price because they have to get turns at the retail level. They have to get people in the store. So this disruption is longer served, and we're going to see, yes, perhaps the other side of the cycle because consolidation will occur for agriculture. But this level of disruption in technology will stay with us for a longer period of time. It's one of the ways we're thinking about the pivot we need to make and have been making in our business. You know, this slide tells it all, of course. Above all, the customer is in charge. The customer is in charge, and they are pushing back through the businesses. The most direct way we saw this was in the East when McDonald's decided that they didn't want the use of BST, which is something that is used in dairy production. It's been used for 20 years or more. It helps dairy production. And they decided that they didn't want this in the milk. So we had to talk to all of our members, over 1,000 dairy producers in the East, and say, you have to change your operating practices at the farm level. This was similar to the discussion around GMOs. GMOs, GMO-free, it's an implied health benefit when actually there is no health benefit. There is no differential, right? That's marketing. How do we know it's marketing? We know it's marketing because acres haven't shifted, and people are advertising against things like GMO-free salt. I mean, it's a mineral. Stop. But, right? And we see it and we advocate pretty directly in the use of science and technology. These are proven technologies that have been in use for businesses for 20 years. You know, dairy production used to have, 25 million milking cows. Now we have 9.5 million milking cows, and we have 60% more milk. That's genetics, that's animal husbandry, this is use of technology. And we need that to meet the grand challenge that I talked about in the first slide, feeding a growing world population. We need that, less land, less water. But above all else, the customer's in charge. Now, what was interesting is we've been talking about that with our members. And so during our annual meeting this past year, we had a consumer panel coming into our annual meeting. So we had all of our farmer members in there and their families. And I said, we're gonna do something different. We're gonna have a consumer panel, and you're gonna hate it. And it's gonna be awesome. You know why? Because we need to listen to what the consumer thinks. You need to get on the playing field. So we had 5 people literally off the street. They didn't know what meeting they were going into. It was a shepherded conversation. It was fascinating about the way they make their choices, you know? And one of the guys was like, oh, I've got my 3-year-old son now, and I make only healthy choices. Yeah, I take him to McDonald's every once in a while. You know? So it was this whole narrative that at the end, they left, and the farmer's like, oh my gosh, we have so much work to do. We have so much work to do. And so you know what we did? We went ahead and helped train them in social media. And what I said is, you know, the fact of the matter is that unless you get on the playing field, the best way to win is to define the playing field. If you allow somebody else who doesn't understand production agriculture, who doesn't understand what sustainable practices really look like, define the playing field, we will constantly be on our heels, we will constantly be reactive, and you will not like the outcome. Because it will be people who do not understand what is involved in production agriculture. Now, that's not to say that the members don't think that they need to make changes or investments or change processes. They're doing that continuously. They're not in a perfect position, but they continue to invest. Think of that level of productivity that I just said, 25 to 9 million. That production has improved because of animal husbandry, because of technology, because of genetics, things that you work on here at the University of Minnesota. And we need to support that level of investment. But this risk, above all else, the customer's in charge, is exactly the right thing. Another story I always talk about is, I was at one of my sons as a swimmer, I was at swimming practice, and I heard another mom talk about how this year they weren't going to go on vacation. She wasn't going to buy any new clothes because she was going to feed her kids only the best stuff, only organic, only non-GMO. And I said, I was listening to your conversation. Might I have a word? And unfortunately, I couldn't convince her. And there are two things that I thought to myself is we all get confirmation bias. We're only looking at the things, the people who agree with us. And then the second thing is this mechanism of leveraging a parent's guilt to say, I need to do what's right for my children. All of us want to do that. That's the push. That's the push that is so dangerous because what we're teaching people is good food, bad food. And you know who can least deal with that is the people who can least afford it. It's the people who can least afford it. And so I do have a passion for this. The consumer is in charge. We all need to get on the playing field. We need to advocate for the use of science and technology, proven technology. And we need to advocate on behalf of the food supply and the farmers that generate that food supply. It's critically important to us. What are we focused on then? We're trying to build tighter connections between the consumers and farmers, creating value-added insights, products, and services from farmer to fork. Now, we've been working on this. The other thing that occurred during the year that I've been here is that there was a discussion about innovation. You can't save your way to glory. Of course, we want to have an appropriate cost structure in this business. But at the same time, we have to drive innovation. Innovation is the only path forward. Consumers are much more willing to change. There's new technology and new insights, and we have to be in front of that. We have to put a tighter connection between the consumer and the farmers. And we need to innovate to do that. We can't just say we're going to be focused on the same things and leveraging our brand. One of the things that happened right as we were working here is we saw Kraft Heinz take a $15 billion write-down. Why is that? They put together the businesses, they reduced costs, but they didn't go to the other side of this equation, focusing on innovation, focusing on what is next from their brands. And that hurt them. That's why they had to take a $15 billion write-down. Their stock is down. And what we said is there is still opportunity and growth in these sectors. I want to talk about how we're weathering this. We're weathering this disruptive environment because we are focused on technology, insights, innovation. You know what's growing and what we think about? Disruption as an opportunity and innovation is our advantage. I like a messy environment, I'll be honest. I don't like kind of business as usual. Give me the mess of it, I love it. Because insight-driven businesses, innovative businesses who are fearless will win in this environment. If we do business as usual, we will not. But I talk a lot to the team about being comfortable being uncomfortable. We will not know everything. It is moving at an unbelievable pace. We will have failures, and that is part of life. But we are not going to be taking asymmetric risk with the business. And instead, as I said, take the $50,000 bet for the $1 million return. Please don't make a $1 million bet for a $50,000 return. Pretty simple. But we need to build, and we know this, muscle ourselves at killing things that aren't working and moving on. Not getting too enamored with some idea that isn't monetizing well. Disruption is our opportunity. Innovation is our advantage. One of the ways we're thinking this across the businesses are a number of them. What is still growing? Well, in dairy, premium dairy is growing. We bought Vermont Creamery. You know, the other thing is growing food service, because apparently only 10% of us like to cook anymore. I threw myself in there, but I'm going to be honest, I don't cook. I'm a really good cleaner-upper. But food service is growing, and that's growing very well. You know what else is growing? Grocerant. People, you go to the store, you buy the chicken, you buy something to eat. Premium deli is growing. Those businesses are growing. And so we're leveraging dairy technology in a different way in partnership with our retailers or with other consumer goods companies. Hershey, for instance, Nestle, creating products with them using dairy technology. In Purina, for instance, we're not just looking at the feed itself, we're looking at feed that tastes bad for an insect, a disease-carrying insect. We're trying to solve a bigger problem, not just what is the quality of feed for the animal, but what is the issue that is a carryover or a follow-on issue. And then in Winfield, as I said, services model. And I'm going to talk a little bit about services because our local retailers are in rural America. We'll probably have 4,000 to 5,000 locations in rural America. We were with Amazon, and they said one of the places they have not been successful is in rural America. Have you seen now in the suburban areas, they've got those little bots that go and make deliveries, right? Yeah, they can't do that in rural America, right? They don't have the density of population. They don't have the streets or the sidewalks to do this. And so we said, you know, we should work together in a different way. Yes, we want our products on your store shelf, but more than anything, we want to talk about how we can partner to solve other issues in rural America. And I want to talk a little bit about that. First, I want to hit on this area and then move over to one of the areas of focus that we have, which is helping the issues in rural America. This Land O'Lakes Sustain, our True Terra Insights engine, as I said, the customer is in charge, but all of us have this concern. The farmer is also the original environmentalist. He or she has everything at risk if they aren't investing in their land. So what we did was use the True Terra Insights engine. It's data rich, it's got over 1 trillion data points, and it can help a farmer improve their decision making about sustainable production right on their farm, while at the same time improving their profitability. Because the observation we had was that a farmer has to be able to be profitable as they're making investments. It makes good sense. That's how you can make progress. We've been doing some exciting things with this platform and with this team. We have some of the best-in-class leaders in this area. For instance, one that I think you would find interesting, here in Minnesota, we're working on water quality issues in partnership with the state. In California, we have a number of large dairy producers in the Central Valley. And there, California had a target against methane reduction of 40% by 2022 or 23. It's one thing to put a regulation out there and a requirement. It's another thing to say, how are you going to do it? But what they did was we worked with them. We worked in partnership with CalBio, an energy company there. And the state government allocated $120 million. We have a number of dairy producers near a gas line. We allowed them to take a loan against their equity with us. They invested in methane digesters. Now they capture the methane, they clean it, it goes into a gas skid, it goes into a pipeline, and that pipeline goes to Los Angeles and it helps run the city buses. Guess what? They can make a little more money, but while at the same time meeting this regulatory requirement, and it's the circular economy. It's those kinds of partnerships, the public-private partnerships, that innovation that I think is so exciting. Oftentimes, agriculture gets hit with this, we're bad for the environment, right? I always get, you know, what do you think about Impossible Burger, or Beth, are you eating cell-based? So I was like, you do you. I'm gonna go have a burger. Not because it's bad, I'm all for innovation, but I think that there's an overstatement about the impact as though farmers or as though agriculture isn't investing and making change. And that's not to say it's in a perfect place, but but there's continued focus on this. And so this sustained division, this group, this Truterra platform, I think is absolutely critical for production agriculture and for working in public-private partnerships going forward. Now, what is the other thing that I've seen? And that would be this level of disruption going on in rural communities. Education, healthcare, opioid crisis, rural broadband. Now we're not able to solve all the problems, although our HR team, I see Lauren Hearing here, who's our Chief Human Resource Officer, and his team are working on healthcare options in rural America. But there are a couple of statistics that you should understand that are incredibly concerning. And all of us should understand them, because at the end of this, I'm going to ask for your help. We need your help. We need advocates. We need communication to understand the challenge that is here. Opioid crisis, 3 of 4 farmers or farm workers have been directly impacted by the opioid crisis. 3 of 4. Broadband. Broadband is a fundamental issue. If we don't have access to technology, you aren't going to have entrepreneurs staying in those towns. The new tools we're talking about in agriculture cannot be used. 25 to 30% of the population in rural America do not have access to broadband. Parents are taking their kids to the McDonald's or the Dairy Queen and sitting outside in their car so they can finish their homework. It's simply unacceptable. Colleges don't recruit there because of a lack of affordability. 78% of the counties in America that index as food insecure are in rural America. Over 100 rural hospitals have closed. We have a shortage of 40,000 doctors in rural America. These are startling numbers. Startling numbers that should be concerning to all of us. You know, I always say if we're not focused on it because of just the numbers, just remind yourself that 19% of the population lives in rural America, and they comprise 44% of the military. They make the investment, they do the hard work, and they need investment. They need investment. The optimistic point that I have is that when I talk about these issues in urban areas, do you know what I hear? I just didn't know. We just didn't know. How can we help? How can we help? We need leaders like you in this room. We need university partnerships. We need advocates. We need to raise awareness. It's critically important. We have to address this issue because we are losing population in many of these rural communities. And I think people forget we have a shared destiny between rural communities and urban populations. It's not, you know, I get really frustrated when people say, well, if they just go to the city, those kids, or if they go to the coast, as though we're going to cede all of the stuff in the middle. We're not resettling the land. Nobody's getting on a wagon and having 10 kids on their way out to Montana, right? We've done that. We now need investment in rural communities. Urban and suburban Americans have better access to good jobs, doctors, hospitals, arts, and culture. This is not a surprise to you. These are the other realities. These are some of the statements and the statistics that I provided to you. Realities of living in rural America. You know what I love? And I was asked, what did I learn? I said, you know what I learned is it reinforced to me the resilience of these families. Think again about what they've been making, which is nothing. They are still reinvesting in their land. And it is stunning to me, when our board comes in, the first thing they do is they go to the children's hospital, they go to a school, and they do a project. They reinvest in their communities. And they invest and are excited about our development division, where we're doing work overseas in Africa and different areas, because they see the world as the community. And they know reinvesting is so critically important. They do that out of selflessness. So I am so impressed with them. And what they need is investment back in their communities. They need investment back in their communities. Fresh food? No, they don't have fresh food opportunities. All of these things are critically important. We have to bridge this rural-urban divide. It gets politicized, doesn't it? And what's been interesting to me is when I talk to our farmer members and they talk about healthcare and the lack of healthcare access, and they say, Beth, are you advocating for that in DC? Yes, I am. What do you hear? I said, well, what's happened is Medicaid expansion didn't occur, and because of that, reinvestment rates in these rural hospitals just aren't there, so they're not able to afford doctors. Well, that ends up being a Democrat-Republican conversation. And so I said, well, we don't need to get into the argument. We really don't. We need reinvestment. We need healthcare access. This is not a mystery to me. All of them want the same thing all of us want. They want a vibrant community to live in. They want investment opportunities in their community. They want good education for their children. They want healthcare. And they want to be respected for the work they do. Nobody's giving you a medal when the manure pump breaks at 3 a.m. in a blizzard and you're out there fixing it. And they do it gladly. And they do it, and we should be grateful. And we should make sure we're advocating for investment. So where do we begin? Well, we began here in this room and in any other venue. I told you one of the things we did was we worked with our members to tell them, get on the playing field. Have a voice. People are in social media. Communicate. And don't be shy about telling people what you need. I go to these places and they're hot wiring something, It's like the old TV antenna, they're wiring it across, and this is the way they're gonna get their data. And nobody wants to complain. We need investment. It is in our best interest. It's a security issue for the United States. It's critically important, and especially in a state like Minnesota. This has got a huge ag economy. We've got some of the biggest companies. We've got a great university here, and we need these public-private partnerships, and we need advocates in these areas to advocate for investment. We need people doing the meaningful work. Over 20 to 40,000 jobs go unfilled in agriculture. You know why? And it's not just at the farm level. It's in the industry. And why is because it's believed that it's not tech forward, it's not sexy enough, right? It is very tech forward. And it is moving at pace, and we need the best in class talent. That's why we have our Global Food Challenge. That's why we come and invest in a university like the University of Minnesota. Because we know the best talent is here. And we need people who didn't even think about food production and agribusiness. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't think doing 1 year of detasseling corn in the summer is gonna qualify me as a farmer. I did do weed beans one time. And again, I don't think this is gonna be a qualification. We need people who didn't even consider it, but who are really focused on doing meaningful work. We need them involved in this industry. We need to make sure that we're making an investment that is so critical for our future in the country. And we need big businesses to lend their voice to the concerns that I'm putting voice to right now. I ask for your partnership. I ask for your advocacy. And not just here in the States. I think the governor got maybe $25 million for broadband investment, maybe a little bit more. I was in Wisconsin, I think they got $45 million. It's a $60 billion problem. We need like a 1930s rural electric initiative. Because $5 million here, $1 billion here from the federal government, it's not gonna get us there. It's not gonna get us there with speed. We're gonna be at a competitive disadvantage. People are gonna move out of these towns. We need that kind of advocacy. Luckily, I was with Senator Schumer, and what I would say is we need to show up in different places. People aren't expecting us to have the conversation. Somebody from New York, I was with Jamie Dimon. I want them advocating on that behalf. We need to show up in different places to make sure everybody is aware of what this challenge is. And then we need to advocate for something like this 1930s Rural Electric Initiative. It needs to move with speed. And finally, the University of Minnesota, where Sri was going through the list of ways that we're partnered, is the perfect partner to advocate and to work with us on these challenges. You know, I went through and I focused on broadband because we can't handle everything, but it's healthcare, it's education, it's infrastructure investment. There are multiple areas we can partner, and we need to partner. You are so well positioned to advocate, to address these challenges, and we look forward to doing this in partnership with you. You know, the very culture of Land O'Lakes is built on a culture of innovation. We take great pride in the fact that we retain farmer ownership. We're working right with the farmer on their farms. To me, again, the ultimate entrepreneur, the original environmentalist, focused on their communities, focused on addressing the grand challenge of feeding a growing world population. I look forward to partnering with you as we address some of these challenges. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have time for a couple of questions. Our first one's here in the back.
I have two questions. They're both different. The first one would be, I'm curious to know what Land O'Lakes' plan is in terms of working with cooperatives. A lot of the grocery cooperative are slowly dying out. Is there any partnerships happening right now with them and Land O'Lakes? And then my second question is in regarding to your global initiative. I just went back home to Togo, West Africa, and I saw a lot of opportunities for growth there in terms of efficiency and feeding people. And I just didn't know what to do with it. I would love to hear more about what your plans are in terms of helping out with the global community.
You know, what was interesting was that I saw a statistic that the number of cooperatives are consolidating, very much like other businesses do, but the number of employees of cooperatives have actually increased over the last number of years. So what's happening is that they're getting more scale. In fact, a couple of our locals that in this reverse ownership model are well over $1 billion, some of them close to $2 billion businesses. And so there's consolidation, but there still is actually an increase in the number of employees there. The cooperative model, interestingly, you know, I also belong to the Business Roundtable, and there was that statement made about working for shareholders, but working in communities and working for employees and things like that. And I said, well, this is a no-brainer for me to sign because that has been the heritage of a cooperative model. It is about reinvesting in the community. And so every bit that we earn, the patronage goes back into, or like a dividend goes back into the pockets of the farmer who invested in their local communities. That's why I say when the farmers are having a problem, it doesn't stop at, boy, that's a tough thing for the farmer. This is all about the fact that the communities get no investment, the hardware store, the deli, things like that. There's nothing there. So you know, I would tell you that consolidation is occurring, yes, in the terms of numbers of cooperatives, but there is reinvestment in employees. The employee numbers are increasing, and we're a big advocate for continuing with the cooperative model because it's about reinvesting in the communities. Now, internationally, yes, we do have an international group. We used to call it ID. We've changed that to Venture 37. John Ellenberger, who's a University of Minnesota grad, is leading that for us, is doing a fantastic job. It's funded by USAID or by the Gates Foundation and other funding providers. And we're working to develop cooperatives, we're working on food production, we're working on food security issues, any number of initiatives, really primarily in West Africa. I think that's an area that we have a specific focus on. But it's exciting work, and by the way, it's one of the things that our board and our members take a great deal of pride in. Again, they see the world as their community, and they want to invest and share their knowledge of production agriculture and try to work towards food security in these countries, in these developing economies.
We have time for one more question.
Ms. Ford, my name is Robert Eddy. I'm going to ask you something I know something about here is telecommunications. And you talked about rural broadband requirements. And you mentioned the old REA program, which they were big supporters of this. But how do you get there from here when you have somebody at the Federal Communications Commission, as an example, who would, of course, be involved in this heavily? And you've got staff people there who I've sat in meetings with, and when we talked about this, we're a flyover state, that's the way they consider us. A lot of other states too, of course. And the quote was, well, there are just gonna be some train wrecks along the way when it comes to providing broadband in some of these rural areas. So with that kind of an attitude, how do you get there from here?
Well, boy, the hair on the back of my neck just stood up. You know, actually, we had Chairman Pai, the chair of the FCC, come to our board meeting. What's great is he's from Kansas, and he understands the challenge because he lives it, and he lived it in his home state. You know, it's interesting. I think that this administration has worked to try to increase funding. It's $1 billion, but I don't think they've allocated it exactly. They've said that the funding is there, but again, it's a $60 billion problem. What's happening now is that we actually have 4 different pilots underway because we don't know that there's going to be one answer. Some people are trying to use unused radio waves, some unused TV waves, some of them lay a line, you know, in different areas, and we're providing a tall structure, a silo on in an area. So there are 3 or 4 different mechanisms that we're trying to pilot. You've got telecommunications companies, you've got like Microsoft and others who are trying to invest. The but for me, and the reason I continue to advocate for something that's 1930s rural electric, is because I believe it will move with greater speed. I'm concerned if we do the 5 million here and then we work about the competition that's in this town, or the state has this regulation, or they're doing the best they can, we're going to be 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about the same thing. So without something that is that large scale that says we have got to address this issue right now with this kind of major funding, if we're going to fund infrastructure at $2 trillion, can we throw $60 billion our way and let's go ahead and address these issues? I don't think that there's one answer right now. Multiple companies are working on it, but it tells you, given the fact that we still have this gap, that this hasn't been solved. There are more conversations about it. There is more interest about it. During an election cycle like this, rural areas have an outsized voice, and because we can't solve every issue, but we know foundationally there has to be technology access in order for us to reinvest and for us to take advantage of telemedicine and teleeducation, things like that. I am a big proponent of advocating for this. When I've spoken to different folks on the Hill, you know, in the Senate and in the House, you know, with folks in the administration, they understand that would be an appropriate investment. I haven't seen anybody actually call for the $60 billion. I'm not sure everybody, again, is aware. So I think what we need to do is make everybody aware. We need to have a coalition of the willing. We need to talk about the urgency, the population that is leaving these rural communities, the challenge that we're going to have to repopulate those areas, and to make sure that we have entrepreneurs investing in them and making sure we're holding on to small business. While we have the voice right now during an election cycle, I would suggest it would be in all of our best interests, even here in Minnesota, and here we are in Minneapolis in the city, to remind everybody again of the shared destiny we have with rural communities and with the city and urban areas, and advocate for something that is big, not the 20 million, the 60 billion, to address this issue. The population there, not just the farmers, those communities deserve it. They're doing the hard work and they're feeding all of us. Thank you.